Hey everyone, and welcome back to the PTG Rail Routes Learning series for Train Simulator. On today's video we're going to be taking a look at the third of the recently released enhancement packs for the HST from Armstrong Powerhouse, which is the VP185 enhancement pack. And so I'm going to be driving a VP185 HST set south along the Midland Main Line between Bedford and London St Pancras International, which is a distance of just under 50 miles. The scenario that I'm using is one which comes with the enhancement pack, following the real-life timetable of train 1 Charlie 93, which is the 5:57 AM service from Sheffield to London St Pancras. As we're starting at Bedford, we're actually starting the scenario at 7:55 AM. And we have one intermediate stop along the way at Luton Airport Parkway. Having featured on this channel on numerous occasions, especially this year, the HST train probably needs little introduction, but I'm still just going to quickly run through the technical specifications for anybody who might not have watched any of my previous HST videos. So the HST train sets are formed of two Class 43 locomotives and a rake of Mark III coaches. The HSTs were built between 1975 and 1982, with a total of 197 Class 43s produced, built by British Rail Engineering Limited at Crewe Works. The total weight of each locomotive is 70¼ tons, and they have a maximum power output of 2,250 horsepower per locomotive, giving a total power output for the train of 4,500 horsepower. They have a maximum speed of 125 miles per hour, though the maximum speed that we will be able to get up to on this journey today is 110 miles per hour. Now in the cab of the HST, I'm just going to quickly set it up ready for departure. Just one thing to point out is that I have already set up the headlights correctly, as we're technically jumping onto this train mid-journey, so the headlights would already be set up correctly in reality. So I'm now just going to press Shift and W to insert the master key. Now I'm going to move the reversing handle to the neutral position and reset the AWS self-test sequence. I'm now going to press Ctrl and D to turn on the driver safety device, so you will hear that going off. I think it's every 45 seconds roughly, something like that, if I haven't touched any controls, and then I'll have to reset that. So now let's just have a quick look around the cab. Over here we've got the brake gauge, which is the second from the left there, the gauge in the middle, and so when the two needles there are pointing to 0, then the brakes are fully released, and the higher those needles are pointing, then the harder the brakes are applied. One thing to point out with the HST is that the brakes are actually quite slow at releasing, so you do need to release the brakes before you've reached the speed which you're trying to slow down to. If we now continue around the cab, in front of us here we've got the brake handle, which has 6 steps of braking. So you've got the initial step, then 5 other steps up to full service, and then there is 1 step above that which is emergency. I'm going to try and not go above steps 4 or 5 today. And so now if we continue around the cab here, in front of us there we've got the speedometer measured in miles per hour, and of course you can see the red line there marking the maximum speed of 125 miles per hour for this train. If we now continue further around the cab, you can see there that we've got a throttle control which has 5 notches of power, and then if we just continue we've got a horn there which is a 2-tone horn controlled with the spacebar and the B key. And now that we've had a look around the cab, let's just have another quick look at the train, and then we can depart and head out towards London St Pancras. Departing away from Bedford, the speed limit is currently 50 miles per hour, and we've got just under 21 miles to go to our next stop, which is Luton Airport Parkway. I also need to take note that we have just departed on a single yellow signal, so I do have to drive assuming that the next signal is displaying a red aspect until I can see otherwise. At the moment, I'm just going to bring our speed up towards 30 miles per hour, and then once we reach 30 miles per hour, I'm just going to idle the power to allow the train to coast until I can see the next signal and what aspect it's displaying. So I've now idled the power to allow the train to coast. The line speed here is going up to 75 miles per hour, and that's for the slow line, which are the tracks that we're currently on. We will shortly be crossing over onto the fast line, and then once we do so, the speed limit will drop to 50 miles per hour for the junction. And then after we've crossed the junction, the speed limit will go up to the full line speed of 110 miles per hour. I can see that the signal ahead is currently displaying a red aspect, so I do currently have the brakes on to bring our speed down to slow down for that. The signal has now jumped to a single yellow aspect with a feather indicator, indicating that we are crossing onto the up fast line. So now just increasing the power to bring us back up to probably around 35 to 40 miles per hour, and I'm not going to go any faster than that until I can see what aspect the next signal is displaying. The line speed on the slow line here has now gone up to 90 miles per hour for trains travelling along the slow line, which would generally, I think, only be Thameslink services on this route. So Thameslink services run from Bedford through central London and then down towards Brighton along the Brighton main line. I'm now idling the power just to allow the train to coast until I can see what aspect the next signal is displaying. I can now just see the next signal ahead by the looks of it, and it looks like it is displaying a green aspect. So I can now go into full power and start accelerating up towards line speed, which, as already mentioned, is now 110 miles per hour. Just experienced some wheel slip there. You may have noticed that the ammeter fell towards the 5 marker there, which means that we actually it indicates that we had some wheel slip, and the wheel slip protection kicked in just to try and prevent us from slipping further. One train that is noticeably absent on this route, and also absent on the Brighton main line, is the Thameslink Class 700, which is the mainstay of the Thameslink network these days. There are still a few Class 319s about, and there are also some Class 387s in use, and I think maybe the occasional Class 377. But for the most part, most Thameslink services that run to Brighton at least are now operated by Class 700s. Midland main line today has actually been upgraded for higher speed limits, and so now there are actually 125 mile per hour speed limits on this route. I believe that's only been within the last sort of 4 or 5 years that that's happened, but with the way that the route has been modelled in Train Simulator, it's modelled just a little bit before that, hence the maximum line speed of 110 miles per hour. What I'm looking out for along here now is a signal which is by an overbridge. At that point, I then know that we're approaching a 100 mile per hour speed limit, which comes into force just before we enter a tunnel. And so as we get to around 105 miles per hour, I'm going to just idle the power and allow the train to coast, and we're going to apply the brakes just as we're approaching the tunnel, just to ensure that we're down to 100 miles per hour in time. So I've now idled the power at 105 miles per hour. We've got the signal there, and now you can see the overbridge coming up just ahead, which indicates that we are now getting close to the 100 mile per hour speed limit. In fact, it seems that the train has managed to coast down to 100 miles per hour without needing to use any braking. So now just going to give us a little bit of power here to ensure that we don't lose too much speed. As soon as we leave this tunnel at the other end of the tunnel, then the speed limit is going back up to 110 miles per hour. I've now gone back up to full power to start accelerating up to 110. One thing I've noticed is that some of the speed boards seem to be missing here on the up fast line. I'm not sure if it's because I'm using the upgrade for this route, the Trainworks upgrade, or it was originally there with the route from Dovetail Games, but a number of speed posts seem to be missing. But you can still see the speed posts for the opposite direction. We're now passing Flitwick Station with 11 miles to go to Luton Airport Parkway. I have now just reduced the power to ensure that we don't end up breaking the speed limit, and to try and maintain a speed of around 110 miles per hour, you need to go between notches 2 and 3 of power. We're now passing Harlington Station with 8 miles to go. We're now coming up on Leagrave Station with 3.5 miles to go. So we have a double yellow signal, so I've immediately idled the power and I've started to apply the brakes just to bring our speed down a bit. I'm now going to check the aspect of the next signal, and if it is displaying a single yellow aspect, I'm going to apply the brakes considerably harder to ensure that we do stop in time for the red. So I've now just passed a single yellow signal and I've now got the brakes up as high as step 5. As you can see, our speed is now coming off quite nicely. I will reduce the braking as we get closer to the next signal. Once I'm sure that we're going slow enough to stop, should the next signal be displaying a red aspect. I can now see the next signal ahead, and I can see that it is displaying a single yellow aspect, so I have now just released the brakes. I'm just going to allow the train to coast for a moment. I'm not going to add any speed at this point until I feel that it's safe for us to accelerate. I can now see that the signal's just jumped to a double yellow, so I am now going to give us some power and probably bring our speed up to around 50 miles per hour. The speed limit here, if the signals were clear, has just dropped to 100 miles per hour, so you just need to remember if you're driving a scenario along here that 2 signals after Leagrave Station, the speed limit drops to 100. We're now coming up on Luton Station, and as we pass through Luton, we've got 1 mile to go to our stop. The speed limit here is dropping to 90 miles per hour at the other end of the platform, And also, if you just look here, if this signal is displaying a double yellow aspect, which indeed it is, that means that we are cleared into Luton Airport Parkway station. So the speed limit's now dropped to 90 miles per hour. I'm just going to allow the train to coast along here. I don't think I need to add any more speed at this point, as we will be stopping very shortly. You can now see some speed boards just coming up facing the opposite direction, so at this point we've got half a mile to go to our stop. You can now see the platforms coming up as we're doing 50 miles per hour. I think this is a good point to be braking, so I've made a step 4 brake application. In fact, I'm going to go up to step 5 there, as I'm not quite sure we're going to slow down quick enough. I don't really want to enter the platform any faster than around 30 miles per hour, so we're now entering at 30. I'm just going to reduce the braking a little here. Here at Luton Airport Parkway station, I need to stop at the S sign, which is at the end of the platform. I'm just reducing the braking here, as in fact we're going to stop a little bit too early. Now see the S just coming up on the left hand side there. And so this should be about the right place to stop. Departing away from Luton Airport Parkway, the speed limit is currently 95 miles per hour, and we've got around 29 miles to go to our next and final stop, which is at London St Pancras International. I'm being very gentle on the throttle as we accelerate here, as the season for this scenario is autumn, and as you've already seen, you do get some wheel slip with this enhancement pack, and when the scenario is set to autumn, much like in real life, you actually get quite considerably more wheel slip than you would do at other times of year, except maybe winter. I guess if there's snow on the ground in the winter, then you'll get worse wheel slip than that. So along here, the speed limit's going up to 100 and then 105 miles per hour. I don't need to worry about exactly where they are, for the simple reason that the speed limits will go up before we will actually reach the change in speed limit. Just to give you an idea of our acceleration rate here, you can see that the Class 377 there overtaking us actually left Luton Airport Parkway after we did, but it's already caught up and is now overtaking. Though that will soon change, and we will then be going faster than the Thameslink service, so we will be overtaking that again shortly. So we just experienced some wheel slip there, even at speeds of around 65 miles per hour. And so the wheel slide protection kicked in, and now we're starting to rev back up again. And hopefully there won't be any more wheel slip as we continue to accelerate. One thing I don't think I mentioned earlier is actually the train operating company for the train that I'm driving, which is of course East Midlands Trains. It's primarily run by Stagecoach, I believe. I'm not sure if it's in partnership with anyone else or not, but East Midlands Trains is a Stagecoach company, and you can certainly see that reflected in the liveries for East Midlands Trains' actual trains. It looks like that we're now catching up once again with the Thameslink service there, and so we should hopefully be overtaking that Class 377 again very shortly. Speed limit's now gone up to 110 miles per hour, and we're now passing through Harpenden Station with 24.5 miles to go. At the arched overbridge that we just passed, we've got around 2 miles to go to an upcoming 100 mile per hour speed limit, so I've just idled the power to allow the train to coast. I'm now going to apply the brakes immediately to slow down, as we have just reached a double yellow signal. So you've still got a double yellow signal, so I've just released the brakes now at around 70 miles per hour. I'm just going to allow the train to continue to coast and see what the signals do before deciding whether I can accelerate or not, or indeed if I need to brake further. The speed limit is now 100 miles per hour once again, although it will be going up to 110 miles per hour after we passed through the next station at St Albans City. We're now coming up on St Albans City with 19 3/4 miles to go to London St Pancras. I did see that signal there did just jump to green from double yellow. However, I'm still not going to accelerate for a moment, just until I can see what aspect the next signal is displaying, and if the next signal is also green, then I will accelerate back up towards line speed. I can now see that we have a green light ahead, so I've now gone up to full power to start accelerating back up towards line speed here. Speed limit's now just gone back up to 110 miles per hour, and will be now 110 for around 5 or 6 miles until the next speed change, which actually is not marked on the HUD, so you do need to look out for that, even if you're driving with the HUD turned on. We're now coming up on Radlett Station with 15 miles to go. As we approach 110 miles per hour, I'm now going to idle the power and just allow the train to coast along here. As I've already mentioned, the speed limit will be dropping to 100 miles per hour not too long from now, and so we're going to come up on a station soon at Elstree and Borehamwood, and then shortly after Elstree and Borehamwood station will be a tunnel. The 100 mile per hour speed limit comes into force at that tunnel, although on the speed post itself it actually says 110. So I'm just going to allow us to coast until we get towards that. If we lose too much speed by the time we've reached that post, then I will add some power. And if I need to apply some light braking before we reach it, then I'll also do so. It seems that we have actually now slowed down to 100 miles per hour, so I'm just giving us a couple of notches of power to prevent us from losing any more speed. We're now passing through Elstree and Borehamwood Station, which is the furthest north that you can travel on the Midland Main Line in the London travel card area. The speed limit is now 100 miles per hour, and once again it's roughly between notches 2 and 3 of power, pretty much the same as you need to do when you're travelling at 110 miles per hour to try and maintain the speed. Immediately upon leaving the tunnel, the speed limit is now going back up to 110 miles per hour. So now I've gone up to full power to start accelerating back up towards that. Now reducing the power as we've reached 110 miles per hour, and we're now coming up on Mill Hill Broadway station with 9 miles to go to London St Pancras. We're now passing Hendon Station with 6 3/4 miles to go, and 1.5 miles to go to an upcoming 95 mile per hour speed limit. So at this point I've just idled the power to allow the train to coast until we get closer to the 95 speed limit, at which point I may need to use the brakes to ensure that we do slow down time. We're now passing Cricklewood Depot on the left hand side, and we're also now passing a warning for the upcoming 95 limit, which is 2/3 of a mile from the limit itself. I'm going to apply the brakes for the 95 as we approach this signal here. So I've now made a step 2 brake application, and the step 2 application was enough to bring our speed down. I'm going to allow the train to continue to coast along here for now. Now passing through Cricklewood Station with 5 miles to go and 3/4 of a mile to go to an upcoming 85 mile per hour speed limit. I'm going to apply the brakes for the upcoming 85 as I see the next signal on this left-hand curve. So we're now down to 85 miles per hour. In fact, I braked slightly harder than I needed to there, which has actually brought our speed down closer to 80. However, we do only have 3/4 of a mile to go to an upcoming 80 mile per hour speed limit, so I'm not going to accelerate at this point. We're now passing through West Hampstead Thameslink station, with 3 3/4 miles to go to our final stop. The speed limit's now dropped to 80 miles per hour entering this tunnel here. I'm now just going to allow the train to continue to coast, as the speed limit will be dropping to 75 miles per hour at the other end of this tunnel. So we'll just brake very lightly as we get to the tunnel end if we are going a little bit too fast. Looks like that we're now down to 75 and I can continue to allow the train to coast. Once we reach the 75 mile per hour speed limit, we've then got 2/3 of a mile to go to an upcoming 60 mile per hour speed limit. Now just applying the brakes for the upcoming 60 speed limit, just to ensure that we do slow down in time. Currently got a step 3 brake application on just to bring that speed off nicely. Now I'm reducing the braking as we're getting closer to 60 miles per hour, and now I've completely released the brakes. Speed limit has now dropped to 60 miles per hour. We've now got half a mile to go to an upcoming 50 mile per hour speed limit and 1 mile to go to an upcoming 20 speed limit. And we just passed their Kentish Town station. We could just have a double yellow signal there, so I'm now applying the brakes in step 2 to bring our speed down a bit more. We're now coming up on a single yellow there, so I'm going to continue to brake, assuming that we're approaching a red signal. In fact, we are approaching a red signal. So I've got to assume I have to stop until I can see otherwise. As you can see here, we are now approaching a red signal. And so I've just braked right down, and now I'm just releasing the brakes. I'm going to try and crawl up to the signal with the aim of not having to stop unless I absolutely have to. So hopefully the signal will change before I actually get to 0 miles per hour. So the signal has just jumped to a double yellow aspect, which means that we are now cleared into London St Pancras station. I can now bring the speed up, but I'm not going to bring the speed up any faster than 20 miles per hour, as the speed limit will be dropping to 20 any moment now. Now that we're doing 20 miles per hour, I've just idled the power to allow the train to coast, as we've just entered the 20 mile per hour speed zone there. At the 20 mile per hour speed post, we had half a mile to go to our stop at St Pancras. And so I'm just going to allow us to coast along here, and we should be okay for now. If we do lose too much speed, then I will give us a little bit of power, of course. I can see there that we're also now cleared into platform 3 here. And so the next speed change is just before we enter the platform. I need to ensure that I have slowed down to 15 miles per hour for that point. Just applied the brakes very slightly there, as it looked like our speed was just crawling slightly up above 20, so maybe we're on just a very slight downward gradient here. You can now see that we're approaching the platforms, so now I'm going to brake to ensure that we're down to 15 miles per hour. Now that we're down to 15, I've released the brakes again, and I'm just going to allow the train to coast for a moment. So as we get to around halfway along the platform, I want to ensure that I'm down to 10 miles per hour. I'm just going to gradually slow down to bring us to a stop. Here at St Pancras, I'm aiming to stop around the area of a fence to our left-hand side, and so I want to stop just as that fence disappears from the driver's window. So this should be just about the right place to stop. And here we are, arrival at London St Pancras International. Thank you very much for watching this video. I do hope that you did enjoy it. If you did, then please don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, for the latest channel updates, you can find me on Facebook, and the link to my Facebook page is in the description of this video. And if you'd like to sponsor anything towards this channel, then please visit my Patreon page. The link for that is also in the description of the video. Once again, thank you for watching.